In the shadow of Aldershot's military heritage, a football hooligan firm known as the A Company emerged from the terraces of Aldershot Town FC, gaining a reputation for violence, loyalty and a rebellious spirit. Despite the club's lower league status, the A Company's influence and infamy grew throughout the 1980s and 1990s, making it one of the most notorious small-town firms in England. A Company formed during the early 1980s, at the height of football hooliganism in the UK. The group took its name from military terminology, reflecting Aldershot's identity as the home of the British Army. This connection lent the firm a distinct sense of organisation and discipline, uncommon amongst other hooligan groups. The members, often young men from local working class communities, were drawn to the firm by a sense of camaraderie, rebellion and the thrill of violence. The rise of the casual subculture played a role in shaping the A Company's image and tactic. Rejecting traditional football fan attire, members of the A Company, like other casual firms, wore designer sportswear and branding clothing. This not only distinguished them from other fans, but also helped them to evade police detection. The smart appearance allowed them to blend in, making their violent actions harder to predict and control. The A Company quickly developed rivalries with firms from nearby clubs, such as Reading, Portsmouth and Woking. These conflicts often went beyond the football pitch, involving planned confrontations in city centres, pubs and other off-site locations. Their willingness to engage in violence against larger, more notorious firms underscored their reputation as a fearless group, despite Aldershot Town's relatively small stature. One of the firm's most infamous incidents occurred during the 1990s when A Company clashed with the Chelsea Headhunters, one of England's most feared hooligan groups. This encounter was notable not just for the scale of violence, but also for the audacity of a smaller firm taking on a much larger and more established firm. The fight, which took place away from the stadium to avoid the police, involved dozens of hooligans and cemented A Company's standing in the hooligan subculture. Another notable incident was when A Company clashed with supporters of Reading FC in a violent altercation that spilled out from the streets into the surrounding streets. The chaos that ensued led to multiple arrests and injuries, drawing media attention and further scrutiny from police enforcement. These battles were not random. They were often pre-arranged, with the firms coordinating meetups through phone calls or other coded messages. The A Company was known for its strategic approach to football violence. Unlike the spontaneous brawls that characterised early hooliganism, A Company's confrontations were often meticulously planned. The firm used a range of communication methods involving mobile phones, text messages and social media to organise their movements and avoid police detection. Their approach allowed them to strike quickly, cause chaos and disperse before police could react. The group's military-inspired name also hinted at their tactical mindset. A Company members often scouted potential locations for clashes, such as train stations, service stations, and isolated areas away from heavy police presence. Their ability to move stealthily and coordinate attacks made them a formidable force despite their relatively small size compared to larger hooligan firms. As the A Company's reputation grew, so did the efforts of the police establishment to dismantle the firm. Local police forces, including Hampshire Police and the British Transport Police, began targeting known members of the A Company through surveillance, banning orders and arrests. Operations were often launched specifically to disrupt the A Company's activity, particularly on match days when violence was most likely to occur. One of the most significant crackdowns occurred in the early 2000s when police launched coordinated raids on known A Company members' homes. These raids, conducted after months of intelligence gathering, led to several arrests and resulted in numerous football banning orders that prohibited members from attending matches or travelling to away games. Despite these measures, the firm adapted, often becoming more covert in their operations and continuing to attract younger recruits. A Company's violent actions left a lasting impact on Aldershot Town FC and the surrounding community. The club, which had always distanced itself from hooliganism, was often forced to deal with the consequences of the A Company's actions, including increased security costs, negative media attention, and a tarnished public image. On match days, the presence presence of A Company meant heightened police presence, stringent security checks, and a tense atmosphere around the ground. For the local community, A Company's activities were a source of fear and disruption. Incidences involving the firm often spilled into the town, affecting local businesses and residents. Pubs and shops near the stadium bore the brunt of matchday violence, leading to property damage and a heightened sense of unease. The firm's actions were not just confined to matchday. A Company members were known to cause trouble in the town, perpetuating a cycle of violence that affected Aldershot's broader reputation. Today, A Company activities have diminished significantly, largely due to heavy policing, stricter laws, and changes in football culture. The rise of CCTV, increased security measures, and the introduction of football banning orders have made it much harder for hooligan firms to operate openly. However, the legacy of A Company lingers in Aldershot, serving as a reminder of the turbulent period in the town's history. While large-scale brawls have become less frequent, the underlying issues that fueled A Company's rise, youth disillusionment, the lure of gang culture, and the thrill of rebellion, still resonate in some parts of the community. For many, A Company symbolises both the dark side of football fandom and the challenges of maintaining order in a sport that has been historically marred by violence. A Company's story is not just about football hooliganism, it's about identity, rebellion, and the clash between police, authority, and the desire for belonging. As Aldershot Town FC continues to build its future, the echoes of A Company's past serve as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the enduring complexities of football culture in England. A book that was due to be released about football hooliganism and featured a chapter about Aldershot Town had sparked a lot of controversy, with critics accusing it of glamorising fan violence. Hooligans, the A to Z of Britain's football hooligan gangs, bills itself as a unique, comprehensive guide to the world's most active football hooligan network. The book, which was authored by Nick Lowles, research director of the anti-fascist group Searchlight, and former football hooligan Andy Nichols, delves into the myths, battles, and police operations surrounding the infamous hooligan firms linked to the clubs such as Arsenal, Liverpool, Leeds United, Cardiff City, Brighton and Hove, Albion, along with Aldershot's A Company. The book's two-page feature on Aldershot Town paints a bleak picture of the club, its supporters, and the town itself. Tracing back to the 1970s when Aldershot FC was part of the Football League, the chapters highlight violent clashes between A Company and rival firms from clubs like Bristol City, Southampton and Reading. In one segment, a current A Company member named Jack recounts his experiences of fighting rival supporters and praises young recruits for their involvement in a violent pub brawl in Exeter 2 years prior. This depiction of the A Company's actions has led to accusations that the book glorifies the violence associated with football hooliganism. Former Rushmore Mayor Jim White, a lifelong Aldershot Town supporter, commended the book, arguing that it only serves to encourage further violence. "If you give these prats publicity, they'll do it all the more," Mr. White stated. "The best thing is to ignore them. The majority of Aldershot supporters are loyal fans who go there to watch football, not cause trouble. If these hooligans want to fight, they should do it away from the innocent bystanders, not in the presence of families." One particular Notorious incident covered in the book occurred in November 2000, just before Aldershot Town's FA Cup tie against Brighton. A massive fight broke out between around 60 rival supporters, resulting in significant property damage as bar stools were thrown through pub windows. Photographs from the violent encounter are used to illustrate Aldershot's chapter in the book. In July 2001, during a so-called friendly match between Aldershot and Reading, violence erupted in the stands, prompting police and stewards to intervene. Supporters hurled concrete chunks, stones, and pieces of terracing at each other. The violence resulted in multiple arrests, and the club issued several lifetime bans to those involved. In another shocking incident in November 2001, a group of Aldershot hooligans armed with police-style batons attacked fans during an FA Cup match against Bristol Rovers. The thugs targeted supporters from both teams who were drinking peacefully at the Crimea pub near the stadium. More trouble followed in October when over 50 individuals clashed with police on Victoria Road in Aldershot before a game against Carlisle United. After the match, some of the members of the group attempted to assault rival fans boarding a train. Chief Inspector Neil Sherrington of Aldershot Police expressed his concern about the A Company, stating, "The main issue for me is the so-called A Company. I would never describe them as Aldershot fans. True supporters would disassociate themselves themselves from the A Company, as they are known for violent acts rather than loyalty to the club. Chief Inspector Sherrington also criticised the book's portrayal of hooliganism, adding, "If it sensationalizes violence, it does a disservice to the sport. Football matches should be safe and enjoyable to all fans." Aldershot FC declined to comment on the publication. In response to the backlash, Peter Walsh, a spokesperson for the publisher Milo Books Limited, defended the book, arguing that it serves an important purpose in documenting the history and the impact of hooliganism. "We published it because it is an interesting and important topic, and this book is the first book to deeply analyse who these gangs are," Mr. Walsh said. The book includes interviews with gang members, police, and intelligence officers, providing a comprehensive view on the issue. "We're not glamorising violence, we're documenting it as part of the hooligan subculture." Mr. Walsh emphasised that the book aims to provide a factual record of the actions and history of football hooligan firms, rather than promoting or endorsing their behaviour. Despite these assurances, the debate over the impact of such literature on football culture continues, highlighting the ongoing challenges of dealing with football-related violence in the modern game. Aidan Warner, a 20-year-old football hooligan, had been sentenced to 6 years in prison after a vicious attack that left a soldier with a life-threatening injury. The brutal incident occurred on Mons Barrack in Aldershot, where Mr. Warner stabbed Lance Corporal David Ferguson, who was 27 at the time, twice in the neck during what was described as a haze, alcohol and drugs. The court heard that Mr. Warner used so much force in the attack that the blade snapped off, leaving a tip embedded in Lance Corporal Ferguson's neck, which had to be surgically removed. The victim, who serves with the Scots Guard, was airlifted to St George's Hospital in London, where emergency surgery was performed to save his life. Paramedics found him with the broken blade protruding from his spine, emphasising the severity of the attack. On the night of the attack, Mr. Warner had been drinking heavily in the pub, watching a football match between England and Scotland. After the game, Mr. Warner and a friend were invited to the barracks by some of the soldiers to continue drinking. At some point during the early hours, Mr. Warner, in an intoxicated and drug-fueled state, picked up a kitchen knife and stabbed Lance Corporal Ferguson without any clear provocation. Neither Mr. Warner nor Mr. Ferguson could recall exactly why the attack occurred, with both being heavily intoxicated at the time. In his police interview, Mr. Warner admitted to having spent more than £100 on alcohol that night and consuming 2 lines of cocaine. He confessed to the police at the scene, saying, "I know I'm in the wrong. It all got out of hand and I will do the time for this." Mr. Warner, a football hooligan with Aldershot Town's A Company, had previous convictions related to football violence, including criminal damage and battery. He pleaded guilty to wounding with intent. During his sentence at Winchester Crown Court, Judge Andrew Barnett commended his reckless act, noting that the attack could have easily ended in Lance Corporal Ferguson's death. "You could have killed it, putting it bluntly," the judge stated. Lance Corporal Ferguson, a dedicated career soldier from Berwick-upon Tweed, was so deeply affected by the attack that he was considering leaving the armed forces. The psychological and emotional trauma, combined with the physical wound, has had a profound impact on his life and career. Mr. Warner's defense lawyer, David Castle, acknowledged that his client had a history of glorifying violence, particularly in the context of football hooliganism. Mr. Warner was an ardent fan of Aldershot Town FC and had previously been involved in violent altercations with rival fans. He had also breached a football banning order in the past, further tarnishing his record. Despite his history, Mr. Warner's family attended the court hearing, visibly distraught by the prospect of their son becoming labelled as a yob. They expressed concerns over his future and hoped that his prison sentence might serve as a wake-up call. Mr. Castle, in defence of Mr. Warner, emphasised that Mr. Warner was now beginning to understand the gravity of his actions, though the damage had already been done. Judge Barnett sentenced Mr. Warner to 6 years in a young offenders institution, describing his behaviour as thoughtless and drunken. The court acknowledged Mr. Warner's youth, but made it clear that his type of violent behaviour, especially involving a weapon, could not go unpunished. "This was a serious assault that could have easily had more severe consequences," said Detective Constable Matt Dennett of Hampshire Constabulary, who led the investigation. "Thankfully, assaults of this nature are rare, and I hope today's sentence reassures the public that this type of crime will not be tolerated in Aldershot." This incident has sent shockwaves through the Aldershot community, known for its military presence, and serves as a stark reminder of the potentially deadly consequences of mixing excessive alcohol, drugs and